Welcome to the Skydance Mountain Author Spotlight, an arm of Authors on the Mountain, the show for creatives of all types: authors, writers, poets, musicians, artists, dancers, and craftsmen. All those who draw inspiration from creativity and from being creative. If you are an author or creator looking for motivation and innovative inspiration, this show is for you. As Stephen Pressfield says, creative work is a gift to the world and every being in it. Don't cheat us of your contribution. Give us what you've got. And to that we say, Amen. This is Brett, founder and creative director at Skydance Mountain. So glad you're here today. Let's get creative. Today, we have the privilege of visiting with author Maeve Birch. Maeve is a compassionate and caring intuitive who has spent hundreds and hundreds of hours with horses, observing, listening to, just being with, and satisfying her outright obsession with these magnificent and sensitive creatures. Her book, Standing in a Field with Horses, is a moving memoir filled with courage and discovery, both of herself and the horses she befriended. We are so excited to share today's conversation with you, so let's welcome author Maeve Birch to the Skydance Mountain Authors Spotlight. Maeve Birch, welcome to Authors on the Mountain. It's good to have you here. We've been kind of building up to this moment for the last few weeks, and I've been really excited about having you on. And I invited my wife, Melissa, and we'll talk about why we have her on today, because your book specifically speaks to her. But thank you so much for being here today.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. I'm excited to be here. It's been a great experience working through creating the audiobook with you. And it's my first time on a podcast. So
you won't be able to say that again.
A new experience for me.
That's special for us too, then. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
I started gushing before we started recording and saying how you are a very special writer. I love your style, the subject matter for sure. We're both horse lovers, Melissa and I here. And not just the fact that that you're writing about horses, because there's a lot of books, equine books out there, and so many good ones.
Yeah.
But this one is a little different. And it's really, it's right up our field right now with kind of some of the work that Melissa's been doing with horses too. And anybody who is interested in horses, equine related subject matter, especially the psychology, being with horses, not just about riding, although riding and performance would really, those people who are oriented towards that would get a lot out of this too. But just the whole beingness of a horse is enveloped in your writing. And I love the style, because having been around horses all our lives, your descriptions are perfect just at how the horses behave. Like, that is exactly what I've seen horses do or whatever.
Like, yep, that's a horse.
Yep, that is a horse. So if you don't mind, tell us your story. How did you get what's your background? How did you get involved with horses?
Right. So I guess it was like a little under a decade ago now, which seems like longer than it seems like. Yeah. So I started out, I really wanted to get involved in horses, but I didn't really know how to, aside from riding, because that's what you see people doing. Like, that if you're like, oh, I'm in horses, they go, oh, like, what discipline do you ride? Or so I started out trying to go to riding lessons and trail rides and things like that. But it wasn't really satisfying. Like, I would get there, they would have the horse saddled, you'd get on, you'd kind of like be a passenger for a little bit and maybe learn some stuff and then get off, and they would like shoo you out the door. So I never really felt like I got to know what a horse was like. It was just kind of like this disconnect. So I started out looking for horse rescues, because I figured that I would be feeding them and, scooping their poop and walking them around and stuff. And I found one that was very close to where I lived. So that was really convenient for me to go and work with them. And it just turned into learning all about what horses are like. I mean, some of the horses were coming from rough situations, or they had weird idiosyncrasies or weird health conditions from, they were rescues. And it really kind of opened my eyes to all the different things that a horse can be. And so it kind of flowered into this world of horses, and I got sucked in, and you know how it happens.
Very
You meet a horse one time, and then all of a sudden you're a horse girl. I don't know
How
quite.
old would you have been? You said horse girl. Were you young or like a little girl or
No, 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 no. No, this was in my 20s.
in your
Yeah. So I came to horses late. I came to horses very late. And I'm almost glad that I did, because I was a lot less impressionable. I was still impressionable, don't get me wrong, but I was a lot less impressionable than I would have been if I was a child coming to horses. And I think it helped in my case.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I love the story of you that it was you're getting ready for finals for what's that, for college, and
Yeah.
tell a
Yeah.
little bit about that, how you saw them across the road there.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so the first time that like this is, I guess, a little less controversial in the horse world than it is in like other places, because like
Uh-huh.
people who deal with horses have these experiences at a higher rate, I think, than other people who don't.
Yes.
Um, for some reason. But yeah, so I was studying for finals, and I was in kind of this headspace where I was not getting enough sleep, and I was kind of like really stressed out and a little zoned out. But I got this break where I went to a cookout, and they had horses in the field across the street from my friend's property. And I went over there because I was like, oh, horses, knowing nothing about horses.
Right, right.
Nothing at all about horses. I was like doing the thing that you're never supposed to do, and like pulling up grass and handing it to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, oh man, horses, this is so cool. And I was tired, and it was this kind of in between liminal space where I was in a break period before I was getting ready to do something extremely stressful. Um, and it was peaceful, and I could hear people around the fire like laughing and playing guitar and stuff in the background, and the horses were just grazing. I mean, they weren't doing anything particularly special, but they started coming up to me. And I was like, "Oh, the horses are coming up to me," you know.
Yeah.
And the first one came up, and I tried to like reach out and touch it, because we're human and we want to touch.
Yes.
So I reached out to its face, and it just kind of like touched its nose to my hand and then walked off. And the second one came up, and I tried to do it again. I was like, yes, touch the horse. And she somehow, I heard in my head, no. And it was definitely a mare, and she was definitely like kind of very, very firm about it, but very kind about it. She just said no.
Yeah.
And I was just blown away. That had never happened to me in my entire life.
To have heard it.
Um,
It wasn't audible. You're saying you just knew
it
that.
wasn't audible. It's not an audible thing, but you definitely, it's like it's not, it's a thought that isn't yours.
Right.
So it has a different like flavor than you would be thinking, like, I'm going to work, and I'm going to, I'm going to pick up this toy. And so it was odd. And it stuck with me because it was so odd. And I just kind of stashed it away and forgot about it for a little bit. But it was just a pivotal moment for me. And I kind of, when I went into horses and volunteered at the rescue, I wasn't going into it thinking I'm gonna mentally communicate with horses, because that's a thing that happens.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it kind of
No,
it
enough.
kind of evolved in a way. And it does still occasionally happen. It's not something that happens all the time or that I expect from a horse, because usually expecting that sort of thing from a horse means that it does not happen.
Right. Yes.
But yeah, it's definitely part of like my learning experience in working with horses. Yeah.
Uh, that that's very early on in the book that you described that
Very,
scenario.
very early. It's like the first
Yeah.
chapter or
And
intro or something.
I loved it because when you described it, did you feel the same way? The horses come up to you kind of one at a time. They have this experience. And the one in particular, you just want it so bad. The one in particular told you, don't, or no, don't.
Yeah.
I could picture that in my mind. So many times have I seen that, even as an adult with horses who knows better. That first, I'm serious. After having read your book, I'm going to be even much less direct, much more
Well, paying
sensitive.
attention too.
Yeah,
So
what is the
I feel
horse
like
saying?
Paying attention. Yeah.
people are just in their own thoughts, or they're just like, what do I want? And not really actually paying attention to the horse and being present
Yeah.
and noticing like
Right.
body language, all the subtle,
Yeah.
but again,
Yeah.
you felt like you had that nonverbal thought in your head.
Yeah.
And that to me is a whole nother level. You know what I mean?
It is.
Like,
Yeah.
think that anyone can experience, or is that something that, that
Oh
anyone,
yeah, for sure.
I feel like,
I'm 100%. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I was
So
just curious.
I'm 100% sure that anyone could do it. I think that humans like just have kind of forgotten about the fact that like animals kind of have this like nonverbal communication that is part body language but part not body language but is kind of tied in together.
Right.
Mhm.
Maybe, and I've never like fully said yes, this is exactly what this is and I know all about it and
Right.
Right,
That's
it,
the
right.
it
other thing I
could,
love.
yeah, throughout the book I'm never like yes, of course this is it because we don't really know, you know.
But you're
Maybe
very
it's a
observant about it.
combination of unconscious like body language reading and my own thoughts tied to it. Maybe it is mental communication. None
Right.
of us really know.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
But
sense.
it is real enough that when you respond to it, the horses respond how you would think they would if
Absolutely.
it was.
That was,
So as
Absolutely.
long as it works.
Yeah,
that's what I love
you
about
don't
it.
have to
And I
label
love,
it.
yeah, I love how you're not so dogmatic about how it works, but that it does.
Mm-mm.
Because couldn't you
Mhm.
just picture those things? Just to give a little background for our viewers and listeners, Melissa, my wife here, is a first grade teacher, but she also, along with our daughter, works part-time down at a horse. Just describe what you do,
Yeah,
horse
it's
rescue.
just a private horse rescue.
And she has experience with horses who've been, being rehabilitated. It's retired, rehabilitated,
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wide variety of horses.
lots of different personalities, energies, lots of different circumstances that these horses are there. So it's a great place to be able
Yeah.
to feel all that.
And she does often
Mhm.
stand in a field with horses. And that was the other reason when I saw your book and I told her about it and we got excited and connecting with you. It's exactly what she does. And we have a lot of horsey friends who um, don't necessarily understand how that works or just seem, maybe it
Or
just
they just
doesn't
want to
matter.
ride, or
Mhm.
they just
Yeah.
want to whatever. And that's fine. There's
Yes.
nothing.
Right. Yeah.
That's how I used to be. I used to always just want to ride,
Exactly. Same here.
and think about
Yes.
kind of all what like I want to do with the horse. And then it
Hmm.
evolves. Oh, there's like a
Yeah.
whole nother layer of like,
Right. And I think rescue is ripe for that because some of the horses cannot be ridden and some of the horses
exactly.
cannot be communicated with in the way that you would communicate with a horse that's perfectly mentally sound.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's a perfect way to say
Yeah.
it. Rescue. There's many of them are just non-rideable companion horses. And so you're relating to a
Hmm.
whole different level.
Right.
Which is like you said, it's a perfect place to get that kind of experience and relationship.
So the
Right.
experience thing. Tell us a little bit more about your journey. So you start. How did you show up at this place and you start gaining these experiences? And
Yeah.
wow.
So I want to mention my barn mentor as well because she was pivotal in both teaching me and also apparently learning from me. I did not realize this until later, where she was like, I learned a good amount from you.
That's amazing.
Um, but she just is a rock of a human being. And so a lot of things like the energy work and um trying out new things in training the horses in a way that was a little bit more quiet and just something that she hadn't tried before and I hadn't tried before, but she was like, let's try it.
Mhm.
I owe all of that to her because she was the one in charge.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I'm just the student being like, I don't really want to hit the pony.
Uh-huh. Was she the one that intimidated you a little at first? Is this the one
Yes, she was
about?
very intimidating at first. Yes, I would just cry because I'm an easy crier.
Yeah.
So
You are
she'd be
empathetic.
like, "No, hit the horse harder," and I'd just be crying.
Aw.
But
Yeah.
I think because of that, because I had a weird response to it that she hadn't seen before, or maybe hadn't seen very often, it got her thinking because she was like, well, why is this person so emotionally kind of affected by this treatment? And I think a lot of times when you grow up in the horse world, when you grow up in equestrian, you're 7 or 8 years old, and the instructor says, well, horses can't really feel when you're smacking them really hard with the whip. Just go ahead and do it. They can't really, their skin is so thick, like they're not going to feel it. And so you kind of get used to doing that, and you kind of get used to riding a horse where their movement is more choppy, or things like evasion of things. And I think you become a little bit numb to it, or you become you still love the horses. I mean, all the people who I have met, my mentor, people who have, done things in front of me and are like, well, the horse needed that.
Hey,
Mhm.
yeah.
They all love their horses. I mean, they're very devoted to their horses. It's not that at all. But I think there's such an indoctrination of kids from a young age when they get into horses that they just don't see it anymore. And they've kind of ignored the fact that there's other ways to do it. And I think right now, because of the internet, because of a lot more people doing other ways of being with horses, that they're being exposed to different things, and some people are picking up on it. Some people are like, you know what, maybe I'll try this other thing, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I think the complete
yeah.
antithesis of that is what we saw. It's been over a year now. Remember that show we saw about them wrangling up these Mustangs, and they were somewhere up in the mountains, and they would beat them and
Oh my
just go jump on them, and they were just these cowboys.
Right.
Oh
It
man.
was the way they started these horses, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, can they not read?
Right.
Like completely traumatized by what they're doing.
That didn't matter to them because it was more about getting these horses
Yeah.
broke so that people could
And
ride.
that is the thing. It works. It does work.
That's the problem,
And that's
isn't it?
why
That it
sometimes they
works.
continue.
And that's the problem.
Well, it works.
Yeah.
And I had a
It
friend,
worked.
throw under the bus, and she probably won't listen to this. I had a friend that
It's
was
okay.
a young person, in her early 20s, and she grew up in a very traditional horsey household where you did,
Mhm.
smack them or whatever. And I was riding with her
Mhm.
for, on and off for a little bit recently, and same thing. It's like she loves her horse to death, but she didn't realize, like, and I kind of would politely try to say, like, this is my opinion, but I really don't believe you should hit your horse. Like, I think there might be a better way, but it's hard because that's all she knew. That's all she saw.
That's how she was raised.
And my
Right.
heart would just break for the horse.
That's what I love
Right.
in the book and this thought process. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
there's just other ways.
That you're showing people that there are other ways, including your barn mentor.
Well, so it's hard because there's such a they get defensive because they of course don't want to harm their horse.
Right.
Because they love the horse. They don't want to, the idea that they have been potentially causing, emotional, mental anguish or physical injury because they're being forced into something that they wouldn't do unless forced. That no one wants to find out that that's something that they personally have been doing to someone they love.
True.
So it's hard to come up to someone and say, I don't think you should be doing it like that. Here's how, here's my opinion, because it meets just this wall. So with my barn mentor, I was just doing it different. I was just doing. And so it was more of like an example. And I think it's hard. It's very hard because I've been to other barns since then, and I've tried doing by example. And you get a lot of pushback, but
Absolutely.
sometimes if you can kind of just, do your thing, the way that you do it, then you get other people who slowly come up and start asking you questions, because the horse isn't killing you and the horse isn't meaning you. And the horse is doing the things, maybe slower, but they're still doing the things and they're not going crazy. And so they're like, why is this horse not becoming absolutely feral, even though you haven't hit it? And so it's just kind of this little opening that you can kind of create just by being yourself, which is just mind-blowing to me.
How to just be ourselves with horses, huh?
Just be yourself with a horse. It seems so simple when you say it.
That's really brave though, because I think a lot of us worry so much about what people think. Because even I felt like that, like I'm just going to do what I do, but then it's easy to like if someone says something or whatever, I just feel like it's
Yes.
brave to be authentic in how you relate with a horse and not be worried about, oh, what are they going to think of me? Or I don't know, I'm not an expert, maybe, like there's just that,
It's so hard.
so
It's
hard.
so hard. And the horse feels it when you get that little,
Yes,
when you're half and half, man, the horse just goes, I want nothing to do with that.
exactly. They're like,
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's what's beautiful about your book too, Maeve, is that it's a spiritual journey. It's not just about how to work with horses or how to be with horses. It's how to be you. And I love that. Can you talk about how you've grown or changed a little bit since you started standing in the field with horses?
Yeah. So that whole being braver about being different thing is just a journey, let me tell you. I made so many mistakes and I still do. I still do it. But at the beginning, I was very codependent. I relied on other people liking me in order to kind of get by, and feeling okay with myself. And so I would just drop my own opinions, ways of being, and try and fit in wherever I was. And that worked to a point, until I emotionally couldn't handle it anymore. And that's when I would break down.
Yeah.
And so I found out that I couldn't continue like that. It was just soul crushing to try and continue like that, knowing what I knew from standing there with the horses and how they were behaving with me. So it's something you can't turn off once you see it,
Yes, yes.
unfortunately. And so it just kind of evolved into if you're going to try and work with the horse, you have to also be around the people and you have to be able to still work with the horse the same way. And it's hard, so hard. But there's more and more people out there who are supportive and can be examples and join a group online that is working with horses the way that you're working. In my book, I list resources. And there's many more out there now. I mean, even in the last 4 years, it's just exploded, which is fantastic.
Like that's very much exploded, and now more and more people have been and are starting to change.
But you're still on the cusp of the way. I mean,
we're still right on the edge of that wave. Yeah. So it's exciting. And I think my book is just one other little drop, in that wave. But so there's more and more people who are willing to support you and support each other in this. And I think that it's an exciting time to try and be more brave and try and be like that one person at the barn who then turns into like 3 people at the barn who then turns into an entire barn that operates this way.
Yeah.
What you do, and even the way you're talking, you can pick up on this too, Love, is that you have to remain humble and open, and you have been. I sense it coming out in your relationship with one horse that came out in particular to me was Red.
Red. I still talk to Red.
Tell us his story.
Red is amazing. So it's hard having people say, oh, my heart horse, but like being deeply connected to a horse that isn't even yours.
Yeah.
I don't horse. But he was in the field where Spruce was, because in the book I have a horse named Spruce that I kind of follow from one barn to another when he gets transferred to another barn. And Red was in the field, and I went up to him and tried to introduce myself, and he's like, I don't trust humans. Forget it. Go away. And that was it. That was the whole conversation. But he spoke to me in the same way that mare had, where it wasn't my thought, it was some other being's thought, because I was like in a quiet place and I was present and trying to like connect with the horses. But yeah, he wanted nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
And but there was just something about him that kind of drew me to him. I'm not sure what it was, because I've met other horses who want nothing to do with me, and I'm like, that's fine.
Well, Well, and he had been called a
So
jerk by other, was it the jerk? Was that the
yeah,
term?
yeah, he was, and he was. I mean,
Yeah.
like he would kick you
Yeah. He was
if you
spirit. He was
if you
some,
got behind him.
huh?
But because I was standing out in the field with him and I was, he wasn't my horse, I couldn't feed him treats, I couldn't train him. I was not supposed to because like he's just a horse in the field with the horse that I'm interacting with. So I would play with Spruce and brush him and feed him treats and all that in the paddock there because he got really nervous when he would go up to the barn and I was like, why am I taking to the barn just to brush him when I can tie him to his feeding post and like close the gate and just brush him in the field? He's retired. I want nothing from him, so I'm just gonna brush him here.
Right.
But over time, I got more and more curious about Red, and he got more and more curious about me, and it was a situation where I didn't need anything from him. And so it was the first time I'd really gotten to know a horse where I didn't need him to do anything. And I had no expectation of him respecting me or following me around or doing things for me. And it was just a unique situation that I ended up in. And it was great. I still work with Red. I now am actually able to take him out and do things with him. And it's very interesting because we already know each other's bubbles.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Uh-huh.
Or already know each other's like mannerisms and body language and stuff. So it's cool to get to work with a horse where you already know each other really well, but you've never actually interacted other than out in the field loose together. So that's been cool.
Humans
That's
could
so
could
cool.
interact as good as well as you and Red. There is a scene in there where so describe or tell us how you came to find out. And this is a little bit feels a little woo-woo. I don't know what else to think about it.
A lot of it is kind of woo-woo, and like I still
Well,
there's just if
Who
it
would
if it works, it
that's
works.
right.
200 years ago, who would say we'd be doing this with and these sound waves and visual waves go through the air?
Exactly.
What the heck is that?
Yep.
Right?
I'm just like, I have no idea. Someone is welcome to disprove it,
Yeah.
but until then, I'll keep using it.
I know. And so, we're all growing and learning from this. But how did you find out? Why didn't he like you? Most horses, their safest spot you mentioned in the book is their shoulder. You know,
Oh, yeah, that was weird. That was really weird. So I don't want to like give away the entire book.
That's
actually, yeah, you're
Um,
taking interest here for sure. I want to reread it.
I
Now that
know. Yeah. So the Tao of Equus is a book that I read kind of early on in my trying to learn more about horses in the mental and emotional and spiritual aspects, which like not a lot of people were writing about at the time. The Tao of Equus is one of the few that I could find which mentioned some of these aspects that I had like kind of started figuring out on my own, but didn't really know much about. And she mentioned these horse ancestors in her, in her book. And I was like, well, I haven't tried that yet. Maybe I can get advice from them.
why not?
So I was like, well, I don't know really how to call horse ancestors or horse spirits, but I can try. And so I kind of like, did some meditating and stuff. And it is woo, and I accept that.
yeah, yeah.
But I kind of like during the meditation, I asked them about Red and how to kind of connect with him better because I just didn't have any clue. And of course, all the information that I was getting from humans was like, tell him to move his feet, boss him around,
Right.
to state your boundaries, which have their place, but it wasn't right for him at that time. So I got this image of a mare and she had this thing going on with her shoulder, and I didn't really think anything of it at the time. But later on, like much, much later, someone told me that Red had injured his shoulder, and that's why I wasn't allowed to touch him on the shoulder, whereas most horses, that's like a really safe place to start scratching and touching if they don't really like touch. It's a very benign place to start. So I tried that and he was just like, absolutely not. Turned around, like bared his teeth at me, ran away. So yeah, that was weird, like really weird. But it some every now and then, like it makes sense and it fits.
Yes,
There's a
yes.
lot there's a lot of false positives too. Like I'll think that I know something and I'll try it out and it won't work. And like that's fine too. But it's another tool that can be used to try and like figure out what's going on with a horse.
Yeah. And I see this when Melissa works with the horses, it like what I told you, it's humility, but it's also patience because I mean, we are time oriented.
Well, so much.
Yeah, we are.
Cannot be there. Yeah, that space is created when there is no agenda and there
Yes.
are no expectations. You're not wanting something from the horse, but it takes so much just patience and stillness and just being in that moment. And that's hard. I mean, sometimes it's hard for me
Yes.
myself having those expectations or like, well, if I could just, you know, and it's like,
Yes.
stop
Reaching for everybody.
I know.
Yeah.
Stop relying.
I could just hug you. But yeah, it's boy, it's something else to just come to that.
What I haven't read, and maybe there are other books out there, because this is what like what I mentioned, what Melissa does out at the ranch, the rescue, is, and we've had our horses in other herds before, in herds with other horses, and we love just going out and being with them. You know, usually we grab them, bring them in, and feed them, give them their meds or whatever. But often we be with them. But I love the picture. I could just picture myself there. Somewhere along in your journey, I don't know how long it had taken, maybe you can address this. You just went out and you talk about the spacing of the horses and how they,
I'm so glad you understood that part. I'm so glad.
If you haven't been with a herd of horses, there's a lot of nothing wrong with people who have race horses and they're in stalls or whatever, but you're missing a whole aspect.
You're missing so much information. Yes.
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit. And how you, as a human, were incorporated into that herd, so to speak. I think of Jane or with the chimpanzees or Farley Mallard.
Right, where you're just totally immersed.
Yes.
Yeah, totally immersed in that experience. So when I'm out in the herd for a long period of time, what becomes apparent is that the horses are very careful about which way they're facing relative to each other, relative to their environment. The spacing between herd members, who is moving their nose like an inch to the left. It's fantastic how precise they are. And you can tell that like a lot of their language is body language when you're out there. But layered on top of this body language is like this, like a web of like awareness or energy or whatever you want to call it. But there's a decision-making process that goes on within that herd of horses that you can feel if you stand with them for long enough. So in the book, I kind of like, there's a little poem, like a free-form poem in there about it, because I was just like, I'm inspired.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, but that's why I'm so excited that like you understand, because it's not just me, I'm writing this book and I'm like, maybe it's just me.
No, it's not just you.
No.
Maybe I'm crazy.
Yeah.
But it's not. So yeah, so like when the horses are trying to, I don't know, they're not trying. They just like kind of group decide to go move over there or go get water. Now it's nap time. Like it's not one horse that's deciding it. It's kind of like this little like energetic spreading throughout that web that's kind of connecting them in the field, and they all kind of just decide together. And when it's you in the field with them and you're kind of part of this little like web thing that's going on in the herd, how it feels internally is like you're kind of sort of feeling like there's a suggestion in the back of your head that like just pops up, maybe it'd be good to go over in that direction. But then the horses literally start moving in that direction that you were just thinking about, and it wasn't you.
Wow.
Isn't that cool? That's how like it feels when you're out there experiencing it. It feels like it's kind of coming from you, but it's also kind of like everyone's kind of just making the same decision together. It's really odd.
Or what other there must be a name.
Tuned into the right frequency.
Yes.
Like a channel that everyone's on.
Yeah, I don't know.
I wonder.
But you have to get real quiet and real present. Yeah.
Are you familiar with murmurations, where birds all, that?
Yes.
Do you think that's related? That there's similarities in that?
I have no idea.
Come on, Dr. Maeve.
It would be cool to hang out. So like what if you went and hung out with a flock of geese?
Right.
Like Canadian geese, just like, because there's a bunch of those in the field. They stay away from me, but What if you just went and hung out with geese for a couple of weeks
I'd probably
and
get
tried
nipped
to
in the
think
butt,
about if
but
that's the same? You know, I haven't
yes,
tried
yes,
it.
yeah.
That's a good
That is, or any of God's creatures. It just, I feel like
Right.
um, that again, we could, as humans, can learn so much from
Mhm.
them. Yeah.
Mm.
Mhm.
There was a quote before I forget that's I think that is a great, probably the best full quote to me from the book, but there's many that says, and it's in the chapter 10 or 11, I think, part two. I had been putting so much, no, I've been putting too much emphasis on seeking, changing, and expecting, and not enough on just existing, just standing in a field with some horses without, just standing in a field with some horses without it meaning anything profound or special, letting it be normal and boring, and allowing the sacredness to happen on its own terms. That is deeply spiritual and profound as far as I'm concerned, and like an aha
Yes,
moment. Yeah,
it was. It was. Yeah.
that is
That is
beautiful.
beautiful. So well said.
Yeah. So when our horses are out in these fields with other horses, there's buddies. What is it about what is it about buddies? Why did this horse choose to be with that horse, and why do they spend the most time together? Did you find that to happen too? Like what made them pair up?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really funny. So, and it's happening in one of the herds that I work with again. So I guess it's pretty common, but sometimes the herds will actually split into like smaller herds, even though they're all in the same field. So they'll like buddy up and like these two will be over here and they're still in the herd and they still hang out with the herd, but like they're their own thing.
Right, right.
Um, the only way I can figure is it's like the same as any other social species. They just kind of hit it off and they are best friends and
Mm.
It's
they
just
just like each other.
for whatever
Yeah,
reason.
and not it doesn't happen in every herd. Some herds are more like coworkers, where they're like, all right, you be the lookout and you tell us when,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's not close, I mean,
Right.
they need each other in order to survive, but they're not buddies on like a personal level. And then other herds, they hit it off instantly and they're just buddies from the very beginning. So I don't know why it happens. I don't know why it happens in humans.
Yeah,
That's true. We're
that
all
part of
just drawn to certain people for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
and you summarized it well. And I don't think I've ever read or heard this either when you talked about them each having jobs. It's more of like a job description.
It really kind of is. I mean, not that they don't overlap, right? Because if
Yeah.
you take one horse out of the herd, the other ones kind of have to cover for it.
Mhm.
But if you have multiple horses in a herd, they do kind of assign roles in some way. Like one of them is really on alert, like more so than the others, and they kind of do the on alert thing. And this horse over here is kind of more emotionally balanced than any of the other horses, and so he kind of acts as like an anchor to the rest of the herd just because that's how he is. And I think as humans, we can learn a lot from that because I think a lot of us try to be everything all the time because we're very individualized, especially like in our society, we're told you have to be everything. And no one else is going to do it. It's got to be you type of thing. But we also have characteristics where there are strengths and someone else doesn't have those strengths, but they have different strengths. And so if you're part of a team, especially, Kohanov talks about this in one of her other books. It's the 5 roles of the herd leader or something like that. But anyway, so like human teams can work in the same way if you know enough to develop people's strengths, to put people in positions where their strengths lie. And
Yeah.
it creates this really solid, cohesive team because then everyone's kind of doing the thing that they are best able to do, and it makes the whole group better. So that's something that I think we can learn from horses because they do kind of do that.
It's true.
I
Yeah.
just had a vision of you standing up in front of people at a TED Talk and sharing that with corporate world and with individual, society.
Right.
Beautiful.
Me to a question. Do you see yourself moving out of your day job, engineering, into doing something more with horses at a professional level?
Oh man, I wish.
Don't we all?
I don't wish.
Can't you get paid to just exist with horses?
If I could just get paid to like exist, that would be fantastic, but I can't.
No,
But
that's
I do like in some ways, so I'm an engineer by trade. I mentioned that in the book. And in some ways, teams of engineers have to work in similar ways. So the lessons that I'm learning with horses, I'm using on the job. Uh, and I think that that's great. I think humans need more of that. A lot of the emotional and, lack of codependency and stuff that I learned from horses, also useful in the human world, turns out.
Very useful.
Go figure.
Yes.
So I do enjoy engineering. I love creating things. I love being able to see something that like I made and with the rest of the team. And it's very fulfilling. So it's not that I don't enjoy my job. I just wish I had more life, I guess.
I
I wish I
understand.
had more hours a day to like merge the two somehow.
You want 25
But
hours
yeah,
in an 8-day week, right?
Do you see yourself getting your own horse
yeah.
someday?
Someday, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think right now, where I am kind of in my work with horses is I'm always going to be learning, but I think I'm learning specific things right now that I couldn't learn if I had to take care of my own horse. So I love being able to work with multiple horses at one time, but I think at some point I would really love to deep dive with one horse. I just don't know when that's going to happen.
Right.
Yep.
When the time is
There's
right.
advantages to both for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool.
So, I loved horses since I was a little boy. I grew up with horses. My parents, I was 11 years old and got my first horse. I had done a summer's worth of riding lessons, and they said, on your 11th birthday, we'll get you a horse.
Oh, nice.
Beautiful. And I loved her. And then I ended up with 3 other horses shortly after that. So I had a little mini herd, and I got to be around horses. I don't take that for granted. I'm grateful for that. But many, many people either live in the city or have like the situation with you. And I don't mean to be stereotypical, but it seems like most little girls love horses. I could just picture somebody.
They do.
I could just picture somebody, maybe a teenager, maybe somebody in their young 20s, or maybe they're in their 60s and they've retired. But how did you get started doing what you do with these horses? I mean, do you have any advice for them? You just go out and start messing with other people's horses?
Well, don't go out and mess with other people's horses.
Good advice. Yeah.
Get a liability waiver and like, start with someone who knows that you're messing with your horses.
That would be a whole different book.
Yeah, it would. So rescue really was very helpful. I know not everyone lives near a horse rescue, but if you want to get hands-on experience for free with horses, like you're not really sure whether or not you want to get into it, horse rescue is a great way to do that.
Yes.
Because they need help all the time. I mean, even if you're just fixing fences, they just need help all the time. And outside of that, some people are really appreciative if they have a retired horse or something like that, of someone who will just come and spend time with them, brush them, braid their mane,
right.
Just pay attention to them, more so than the person can handle themselves, because usually they've got their riding horse that they're still like super engaged with, and they've got their retired horse that like they're trying their hardest to pay attention to and like keep going, and but they're appreciative of the extra attention that some like an additional person could give their horse, even though they're not ridden. So sometimes that's a way to do it as well.
Beautiful. Any other horsey questions?
I don't have any that come to mind. She's so thorough.
I love it. If you're a horse, you'd be a thoroughbred. Sorry for the bad. So this podcast is called Authors on the Mountain. So I want to talk a little bit about the writing process. Are you a writer at heart? How did you get started writing, and what led up to why did you write this book?
Right. So this one is a memoir. In the future, I may write other stuff that isn't strictly memoir. I haven't decided yet. But this one, I really wanted to just kind of document all of the things that I had found out along the way. It's not trying to directly tell people what to do. It's not trying to, force my views on anybody. It's written And I kind of got this from Mark Rashid's books, because he writes in that style and I love it. But it's written as, here's what happened to me and how I handled it.
Yes.
Meh.
Yep. Yep.
So my mom is a librarian and she was an English teacher for a long time. And she loved to write and she kind of passed that on to me. So as a kid, I was writing these little stories and like submitting them to writing contests and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's just always kind of been with me in the back of my head. I started a couple of novels and like never finished them. And I wrote poetry a lot.
That's always been in
Yeah.
your
So
blood.
it's always kind of been there. And I finally found something that I was passionate enough about that it made me finish a book.
Yes, yeah.
So cool.
Mark is a good friend of ours, and I think of his old man stories. You know, the old man had me do this, or the old
Yes.
man did that, or whatever. And it kind of is a great. I just heard somebody say that the best learning books, if you want to change something in your to be a success or personal growth, is to read memoirs. And this is
Yes.
no exception. This book that you wrote is that way. Who are some of your influences? You mentioned the Tao of Equus and Mark Rashid. Anybody else or any other books that you'd recommend for people either on riding or on horses?
Right. So gosh, you're gonna make me think of names off the top of my head, and that's
Mhm.
not my
Yeah.
strategy.
Hey,
I have a bunch listed in the appendix of my book.
I was going to say,
they're in the appendix
in
of
the
book,
show
but-
notes, we'll put it too. We will. If you have any that
Excellent.
you highly recommend, people can check it out in the show notes. I'll have you email this to me. So
Yes,
sorry
for
to put you.
sure. Yeah. The only one that so one of the ones that helped me early on, and I do differ now in some of the things that I've picked up versus the ones that are presented in the book, but like that doesn't matter because this was this person's observations and I just have my observations.
Yes.
But Sharon Wilsey's books are fantastic in learning to read horse body language and the subtlety that
Mhm.
they have in their body language. I really enjoyed that one. If you want to get more technical books, like technical manuals, then I don't know how to pronounce the last name, I'm sorry, but Rachel Drosma
Uh-huh.
has a book that's oh, I can't remember the exact title right now, but I think it's like the calming signs of horses. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's behavioral indicators of being afraid or being nervous or having these high emotional states for horses and what to kind of look for. Uh, as far as the more narrative memoir side of things,
Mhm.
there's the Red Mare series. What is her name? I'll have to give it to you for the show notes.
I'm not
But
familiar.
I found it out.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
I was just looking at your appendix on my Kindle.
There you go.
On my phone, I was
Yeah,
like,
that one's actually not in there. That one's actually not in there.
yeah, no, it's
I
not.
I
So what is
crossed
the
that one after the
what
book.
is the Red Mare series? What is that?
It's the Red Mare series. I'll have to look it up. I cannot remember the author's name right now, but she has this red mare, and she did the same thing kind of that I did, where she just sits there and observes, and does activities with her red mare and learns a lot about things from her. So it's a really good series. Let me see if I can look it
I
up.
love
I
finding.
love new things. I'm always wanting to read stuff.
Yeah. What about as far as writing? Obviously you are a good writer. So did you study that very hard, or are there any other books or influences on writing?
I just read a whole lot as a kid. My mom's an English teacher and a
Yes.
librarian. She brought home books constantly.
By default, you already have it.
Yes. Yeah.
I just had it around me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's good. Well,
But I loved sci-fi and fiction, like high fantasy fiction books. So like Anne McCaffrey and Brian Jakes and all that. Like I grew up reading those series and they were
Yeah.
fantastic. And
I was going to ask
I
you.
probably pick like the more authors you read, the better you can like kind of model those because they all get mushed into your head and
Right.
yeah.
Yes.
At least I think that's how it works.
Well, it worked for you.
Yeah.
Because
It worked for me.
That's beautiful. What's next? What's you kind of Melissa kind of asked you that early on, but what are you and you mentioned, maybe the next books. Do you have you started anything at all that way or?
Oh, so I kind of want to write one on more of the energetic stuff, mixed in with the physical body language aspect of it, because I haven't come across a book that really walks people through that in a way that is more technical and broken down into steps. Like I've come across some courses and some interviews with people that's kind of broken it down a little bit more, but I haven't seen books on it as much. There may be some out there that I haven't found.
Yeah.
Uh, but I really want to write it in a way that people can have activities that they can do and
Yeah, write that book.
a
Write
way
that
to
book.
recognize. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, write that book. I need that book.
You need it right now.
Like, let's go. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, because
But I'm still finding stuff out all the time. So like it's hard to like put a pin in it.
that's why it's book two.
I know. Yeah, like second memoir, 4 years later.
As you're as you're describing that, though, I'm thinking of. I mean, we got into natural horsemanship years ago, and we're very familiar with the Pirelli method. And it was nice to have
Yeah.
down into the 7 games or whatever. I would love to have some things
Mm.
that are easy to. I mean, I know you're kind of like it's like telling people how to meditate in a way because that's you've got to kind of.
Kinda. Yeah.
But still, it
It's
would be nice
hard.
to have some helps, some
Yeah.
visuals or whatever.
Kind of a
So
guide.
go
It's
for
true.
it.
Yeah, even to know what to look for.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Anything else that you'd like to share today based on what's on your heart right now and that we might have missed asking you?
What's a big takeaway you would like people to take from your books, from your practice, from what you've come to understand with horses?
I think that it's okay to slow down. It's okay to like slow down and look a little bit silly because that's where the learning happens. If you're trying to rush through it and you're trying to get the horse to do what you want or like touch the horse or it's hard to get to that place where you're learning new things because your awareness is all focused on like this one point, and that's not how horses work. They're very broad focused. So in order to learn from horses and kind of get to the place where you can use that in your own interactions with horses, it's important to be able to quiet yourself down and release that thing that you wanted to do with them in favor of where the horse is right now. There's a lot of horse people who do this naturally and teach this. It's definitely not a me thing. But if you're in the barn and there's a bunch of people around and you're holding onto the horse and the horse is like, I am not going through this doorway. Absolutely not. I'm standing here. It's real easy to just like pop them with the rope and like, let's go. It's so easy. And sometimes like easy is not the same as what I'm doing, if that makes sense.
Right.
You're not finding out why that horse is stopping in the doorway. You're not like reaching through all the little layers and figuring out what the horse is thinking when it's standing in the doorway saying, I'm not going to go. And other people will try and push you through it. Other people will smack the horse for you. I've
Yeah.
had that happen.
Just do this. It's
They'll
like,
come and help, man, immediately. Because they see you struggling and they're like, oh, I can't stand it. I can't stand watching. And so they try and solve it for you. And you just have to kind of politely, and it's hard. It's so hard. Just politely be like, I'm doing something else right now. If you need to get by me, please, like I'll move to the side. But I'm doing something with the horse currently.
exactly.
And it's hard, but it's how you work through it.
What do you do about feel like you've ever had, because I know you've had this happen. You're working with a horse and somebody else that comes in on another day undoes what you did. Is that have you had that experience?
Honestly, that's not that much of a problem. The horses are able to recognize which person is which.
Good.
Sometimes people don't realize that. I don't know if you're okay. Yeah, so horses can recognize what one person's way of doing things is versus another person's way of doing things. They do that with each other all the time, so they can kind of convert it over to, this human does this and this human does that. And sometimes they'll try it out with another human for a little bit until they figure out, oh, okay, it's just this one person. But they do figure it out, I swear.
Yeah.
Good.
Well,
Good.
yeah, I was thinking of Red in particular, and if you kind of told him, it's okay, I'm not going to touch your shoulder, or whatever, and then somebody else came in, was very clumsy and
Or very direct line,
'Cause-
and was like forcing him to do stuff.
Just rubbing on the shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would just associate that particular person with that. He may be shy about it with me for a little bit, or he may, act the same with both people for a little bit, but over time the interactions are consistent enough that they kind of get okay, this person does this and this person does that.
Yeah.
At least in my experience.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
It drives me nuts though.
I know.
It does. It drives me nuts. It's like, don't do that.
But that's the reason why when sometimes people will send their horses to trainers and they'll get their horse back and the horse is behaving absolutely push button perfectly, and then it slowly degrades and you have to send them back to the trainers because they can recognize that people are different.
That's exactly right. You have to train the human too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it works the opposite way too.
That's true.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, the art of slowing down. If we could just learn to slow down, I think we'd all be a little healthier too, mentally especially.
Mhm.
Probably. Yeah, probably. Because you can use it outside of horses too.
Yeah.
That's the thing. All these things are principles for life,
Yeah.
and relating to other people. And
That's why I'm so excited to have had the opportunity to do this audiobook for you, Maeve. And I can't close this without thanking Amanda too. You had a reader,
Yes.
who is just an amazing writer. Reader, narrator. And if you want, this is kind of a dichotomy because we've been listening to it at nighttime before, or while falling asleep, even laying in a bed with horses. And such a calm, soothing voice.
Yes, she has got the best reading voice I have ever heard. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
just smooth.
she's amazing.
And but at the same time, you can fall asleep to it, but you don't want to because it's a great story. So that's what I mean by the dichotomy. Like,
Yeah.
okay, that's like
so
taking
soothing, and you're like, night,
it's
night.
like taking caffeine and
Yeah.
and
Yeah. But thank you so much for like offering this in audiobook form. And like, so I don't know if people know this, like you started reading the book and came to me and you were like, you don't have an audiobook yet. Do you want one?
absolutely.
Honestly, I hadn't thought about that. But people who are horse people are so busy all the time. Like all the time. And so audiobooks are sometimes the only way that they have time for reading. So they're going to go visit their horse or they're scooping stalls or whatever, and you can listen to the audiobook. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, thank you for capturing that vision because so many more people now and horses will be thanking you as a result of making it available.
How long have you been doing the horse rescue thing? And like, what's it like?
Well,
that's only been since this summer. I mean, I've been studying horses and loving horses and kind of changed, my horse as he got older. I wasn't able to do as much with him. I started kind of transitioning from, what I wanted to do with him because I wanted to do, I did endurance with him. I love to trail ride. I love to love to go fast. I love to just be like,
Oh, that takes so much skill though. Like endurance is one that I just like boggle by.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's like my favorite thing in the world. But it's also kind of like I could tell over time my horse was starting to hate life. and now looking back, it's like I just feel like I've grown so much as a horse person and as a person going, it's not about what I want all the time. I need to be, have compassion and empathy for my horse and where, and start trying to understand him better and what he wants and his likes and just get into his head more because he's such a good boy. He would do it.
Right.
But he really didn't love it. And he told me that many times. And I was like, yeah, that's nice, but this is what we're gonna do.
I paid money for this. Like,
They like it's
and that is a huge, oh my God, that is a huge driver. A huge driver because they're so expensive.
Yes.
so expensive, and
So
like the shows are expensive, and the tack is expensive, and the insurance is expensive, and the horse boarding is expensive. Like you're pouring so much money into something that you feel like you have to
do
do
something.
something with.
Yes, exactly. You have to
Yes.
perform and have something, an outcome of some kind to justify it.
Right,
Yeah,
right. And
agree.
to
And the vet
justify
payment.
it, yeah.
Yes, I agree,
But
but it's
it's
not
hard to get past that sometimes.
so
Yeah.
hard to get past that. And then I think as he got older and I just started doing less riding with him and less pushing him and just starting to really work on more, I started following other people too. Like I would always follow people that was all about the training, like it started with Pirelli, and then I got into some other people, and and my good friend Tia down in Parker that's near us, she's a natural horsemanship trainer, but I started to move away from just like the tasks of what I want my horse to do, and started paying more attention to how he felt about
Mhm.
everything. And then that kind of
Mhm.
had me shifting my thoughts, and I started to follow other people, Warwick being one of them, that was
Orica's great example.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think he's the one that really had me starting to shift my thinking about that. And then
Well, because he shifted
yeah,
as well.
he wasn't like that.
2015, man, he started doing the stuff I was doing, and I typed into a video of his
Yes.
because he used to respond to comments. I typed
Yes.
into video. I was like, this is such a brave thing for you to do. Like, I admire your bravery in doing this new thing
Man.
that like you have no idea what you're getting into.
I know, and I thought
And
that
he's
too
like,
for him. I was like,
"Thank
wow,
you."
I wonder how much like pushback he's gotten, because he did like a 180, like,
Yeah.
but I
A
loved
complete 180.
loved it. It just drew me in, and it was like, oh my gosh, he's starting to like totally shift his thoughts about everything, and his own, and he's based on all his stuff too. He's like, I've gone through so much therapy and this and that, and now I'm starting to focus on myself and meditation, and it's like,
Like, man, I went to therapy and like my
Uh-huh.
mind is
yeah,
blown.
starting to be a little more
Exactly.
introspective. But it's like it shifted his whole, I mean, he just changed, and it was just it was a catalyst for me to start looking at
Oh, that's
this differently
wonderful.
to achieve. Because when I started out in Pirelli, it's like there was like, you pass these levels and you have to be able to do this and this and this and this and this. So that's what I did with
Right.
my
Check
horse.
the
I was like,
boxes.
you
Yeah.
got to be able to do all this stuff so I can get the little string and say I passed this level. Who cares if there's a back? Too bad.
Or if it's hurting.
So anyway, I guess I just have such a different thing. And then about a year ago, it's been about a year and a half, my daughter started working at this rescue, and I started just going for fun, and kind of like you said, like I always just worked with my horse, and then being with all these different horses, many of them unrideable, and just spending time
Yeah.
literally like 2 hours out in the field with them, and it just was like mind-boggling and eye-opening.
Yeah.
My whole, like, I was actually starting to enjoy that way more than I was riding,
I've seen
which
that
was weird
shift.
for me.
Yes.
Weird
I,
for me.
Yes. I'm
But
like, I'm
I was
doing
like,
nothing.
oh,
Why am I
true.
enjoying this?
yes, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much more fulfilling, like into my soul, than
Right?
I used to feel just
And you
jumping
don't
around.
notice time passing. You're like, I thought that
No.
was 10 minutes. I've been here for an hour.
Uh-huh.
Exactly. Like,
Goes too fast.
and what's great is even now working there, it's amazing. It's like a very wealthy woman who has a private horse rescue, and you basically do all these chores in the morning, and then you have like 2 hours, and she wants you doing nothing but being with the horses, whether that's
Oh
brushing,
my
bathing,
God, that's
walking them,
amazing.
whatever you want to do. So it's like all summer I would just spend 2 hours, and there's a Mustang named Red out there.
Uh-huh.
I was wanting to say like, but I didn't want to monopolize the conversation. But there's
I have a red too. Yeah.
and he was just like, I don't think so. And it's
Yeah.
been such a journey with him gaining his trust. And I would just go and literally just sit out there in the field. And he would always be the one that would come up and just start kind of messing with me and being with me. And then all the horses would kind of be out, and he would stay within like 6 feet of me, all around me.
Aw.
I'm so bonded to him, and I just love him so much. And I don't know why. We just started,
Yeah.
I feel like we started to kind of understand each other. So it's just interesting. Again, when Colo, my Arabian, was getting where he was having neurological problems and arthritis and couldn't do anything, I was like, okay, I got to start saving money. I got to get another horse. And I'm on all these endurance sites, and I don't know. I was
Right.
just, and then it's like now with this summer and all this whole other shift, I'm just like, oh, I just want to be with horses. And I just love that whole, it's like, it's a whole different dimension of being with horses that I didn't know existed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Completely different
really
world.
powerful. And I have friends that haven't even and not that they have to, but they have no clue what I'm talking about.
So I tend to go out there, catch him, which he doesn't like being caught, which I totally understand. But he started letting me catch him because I don't take him out and do stuff with him other than give him massages and take him to graze and like do little piddly stuff with him that was really easy and just fulfilling for both of us.
That's right. You're changing his mind about that.
Yeah, so I go out there. I was like putting fence posts in this past weekend, so I was exhausted. And so I go out there on Monday and I'm just like, I don't want to do anything. And he wouldn't let me catch him because he's like, I know you don't want to do anything. And I really don't want to do anything with you if you don't want to do anything.
Yes.
So I just stood next to him in the field and it's the same thing that it always was. We kind of like stood there and just browsed and he notices me. I think that's the thing. People don't realize that like horses stand together without touching each other and just notice each other.
Yes.
And that's horse friendship.
Right.
And people who don't have cuddly horses are like, I don't think my horse really likes me, but it's different because they're horses. They're not
dogs.
humans.
Yes,
They're not dogs. They're not humans. Like they're not cuddly.
right. Yeah. They're not.
Although you did have a horse hug you for a long time, didn't you?
He did, but it's a very rare thing.
Mhm.
And it's something kind of like mutual grooming where you have to be really good friends if they're gonna do that. And it's kind of like we're in a certain state of mind and it's nap time and it's kind of cuddly grooming time. But most of the time horses are just grazing together.
That's cool.
Like that's
How
like
Warwick-
90% of their time.
Yeah.
I love how Warwick like talks about how you're aware and then you help them be aware that you're aware of them. You know what I'm saying? Like it's this whole like
I like that.
So
I love that.
cool to me. I know. It's like I don't know. It's just a whole
They know that you know that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
forget how he says it.
Like it's like this weird dance thing. And it's just and it's hard to explain that to people, and it's certainly hard to teach it,
Right. Yeah.
We were talking about other people messing with the horses because there are my daughter works there and she's pretty savvy with horses and pretty good, and she just loves to spend a lot of undemanding time with them, so they love her. But there is another girl has no horse experience that's just experimenting and doing all these things with them, and I'm like, oh, she's like with Red, she's like, oh, I'm gonna teach him how to fly spray, and it drives me nuts because I'm not out there enough right now too because I'm back in school, but I do feel like sometimes I can tell when he was approached.
Because all of a sudden he's like afraid.
Yeah, all of a sudden he's afraid of things. He's not wanting me to catch him when he was fine before, and I'm like, whoa, what just happened? Like, who messed with him?
Okay.
I mean, like
that's what you were headed towards when you asked that question. Okay.
And that's hard because like the barn manager's like, well, just help her, teach her some stuff, and I'm like, I can show her some things.
Well, he said, can you come out some Saturday?
He's like, can you come out some Saturday and tell her, I'm like,
this is like
it's not like a checklist. Like
no.
So it's like, I just wish she'd just been undemanding time. And they're wild. They're Mustangs, like there's 10 other horses she could mess with, but she wants to experiment with the Mustangs. And I'm like,
yeah,
God, these horses is like the foundation of their,
I know.
Like someone who doesn't know anything about horses, and she's out there laying the foundation for them. So it's frustrating, but it's fine. I'm over it. It's fine.
You're like, it's fine. It's not fine.
It's really hard. Yeah.
No, I mean, I've run across people like that as well, and it's hard because they're so enthusiastic. They're so like excited to be there and like want to do stuff with the horses and like untamed Mustang. Like, I'm a princess.
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah. But I've run across that personality before, and it's hard because they are so energetic, like so up all the time that it's difficult for them to get quiet, and I don't know how to solve that.
Well, and their energy even is a lot of pressure for a horse,
Yeah. So
something. So
it's hard.
I just love spending undemanding time with horses, and that's something that I think I used to do enough of. because it was more like, when I go to grab you, we're going to go do 20 miles or 15 miles or,
Right. We got to get trained so you can be healthy. Yeah.
yeah. And we used to laugh because we'd go, the second we'd hook up the trailer, Colo, my Arabian, he would just be like,
Where's that?
there,
Oh.
to slightly start to walk and go,
Bye.
and he would just and kind of hide behind the shed. And we were like, oh, that's not a picture.
Our daughter actually made a picture that is you can see.
Oh, yes.
Hold it up to the...
My daughter painted this. She's an artist.
Aw.
And peeking
Aw.
around because that's how he would be. And I was like, I see you and you know what we're doing. And then it's like, and then if I just went out to just muck or do whatever and I had no agenda, he would just come and follow me everywhere.
Right.
Just want to be
Then
with
they're all over you. I know.
Yes.
And I was like, oh yeah, I guess there was something to that, And so anyway, I just love spending undemanding time. And when you leave them, having them have that feeling of like, that was a great experience,
Right. Even if it's not all the time, just like
No, it doesn't
sometimes.
have to be all the time. Just,
You know?
well, yeah, something I was reading the other day said
Yeah.
like 50-50 is even good, for every
Yeah.
session, the next session, just do bonding and undemanding time.
Yeah.
So they're not
Right.
all like, oh God, here she comes again.
Exactly. You
I
need
can talk to
work.
her all night long. I know.
That's why I know we're
Yeah.
in good touch here.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited for what you have next and what, you find. I would like to learn more about energy work because I don't quite understand how that works. I have a friend who wanted to come see Colo and she's like going all over his body and she's like, I can feel that there's stuff here. And I was like, what? Like I feel like I'm intuitive and I don't know what you're talking about. So I would like to be better with that. You know what I mean? And I just don't know how you get that kind of, I don't know. That's where I want.
Right. Yeah. It was weird. Like you read the book. At first I was just like,
Uh-huh.
it's not
right. Yeah, okay. I could just make that up.
Yeah, all right.
Well,
Get your weird horse
going on
thing.
Yeah, but so that kind of stuff really fascinates me. So I just want to help horses. You know what I mean? I want to help horses feel better.
Yeah.
I just want to help horses feel better and just mentally and emotionally. Well,
Right. Yeah. And they do like learning that helps people too somehow. Like yeah.
The world a better place.
It does. And like you said,
Yeah.
even not directly trying to be like, here's what you guys need to do, or here's what, but just even being someone who people go, that's interesting. And watching you work with horses in a way that gets a response that they're like, well, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. Or how did that work? Just being that model.
Right.
It's kind of, I think that's a great way to do it. I tend to be like, well, here's what you need to do. You're being too direct line with your horse and you should never hit.
I wish that worked. I wish that worked.
No,
it'd be so much easier.
Really defensive. People get really defensive. And I
do.
Yeah, I get that. I would too. But sometimes it's like, I just feel for the horse and I'm like, I have to stand up for the horse. But now I learned, like, I'm like, yeah.
I think of
it is hard.
And we didn't go into that at all, but you had this person in the church who was really leaning on you and kind of draining.
Yes.
And emotionally energy.
Yeah.
Gosh.
I learned from that, let me tell you.
Yeah, and you needed to, this was your big personal growth challenge that I heard. I'm sure there's more to it.
Yes, the entire book was just me headed from that to like being an independent person who could stand up for myself and what I thought.
The evolution of that was like amazing.
And I love that you have a therapist. Most people are like, not most people, but there are many people who need it. All of us at some point.
Right. That are like, oh, therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or either don't understand it or are too proud to do anything.
Right. Yeah.
That's again, I have to say, Maeve, is that you are very humble. And that's why you're such a good teacher, I think, is because you're
humble and brave and willing to take risks and share your story. And I feel like that touches people way more than any, here's
how to do it. Yeah.
Exactly.
That was the goal. Like,
that's
good job.
That's a very indirect way to, touch people and have them all of a sudden see things in a different way. And that is hard to be vulnerable like that. Like that would be hard for me,
Yeah.
to be like, well, I was really good.
I was.
Because I know, and I have too.
Like, I look back.
No, I was thinking of
I
you.
look back on the stuff that I put up with, and I'm just like, why did I do that? There was no way that was healthy.
Broke free.
Well, I could tell you so many stories. I was the same way, and it's like it's just so nice to hear someone be so vulnerable and open and share that, but then also how you changed and how your life helped you to kind of gain a different, I don't know, I can't even talk right now. I'm like the least articulate person you'll ever meet. I have so much here. Out here, it just kind of goes.
Like,
so I'll say like that. Okay, that's all I got. Yep.
Well, ladies, this was amazing.
So fun.
I did not I usually hit stop recording, and I just didn't, and I don't know why, but now I do. I think we're going to have it like it did.
Oh gosh.
And then we're going to call this an Authors on the Mountain Extra for those who want to stick around.
There you go.
Our first yet. Thanks to you guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for just being here today too.
Yeah. And if you want to chat about horses and stuff, anytime, just give me a call.
Okay. Apparently I could go on and on all night long and just
Right.
Well, this wraps up today's show with equestrian author Maeve Birch. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Be sure to check out Maeve's contact information in the show notes. Thank you for being here today at the Skydance Mountain Author Spotlight Podcast, the show for creators across the globe, where we encourage you to get off your duff and create great stuff. We'll see you back here next time.